What's up guys, Sean here, and we're doing the video that you guys voted for. I recently did a poll on my community tab. There were 3 options to choose from. You guys overwhelmingly picked one topic, and that's exactly the video you're gonna get. Well, not exactly the video you're gonna get, but stay tuned. I am not a deceiver. Real quick, you guys should know by now that this channel really isn't about personal attacks or insults, so I'm not going to make a video where I just call somebody that I don't know and I've only seen on the internet dumb. What I'm going to do is show you, using evidentiary facts, who on TYT contributes the least to every panel that they're on. Now, none of you who left comments on the poll guessed the right person. It's not Cenk Uyghur's nephew. It's not Francis Maxwell. It's not Cenk, Anna, John Irola. It's actually one of the comedians. And on that note, for those of you who are on the Jimmy Dore bandwagon, you should jump off of that. Yes, Jimmy Dore deserves credit for being on the right side of the internet censorship issue. However, that does not change the fact that he is one of the most regressive contributors to the Young Turks. And it's not just people in the audience. There are a ton of other content creators who have made videos savaging Jimmy Dore for his regressive positions, and rightfully so. All of a sudden, pretend like Jimmy Dore is somehow the best liberal. It's not the case. People can be right on one issue or right on a number of issues and horrible on a number of other issues. Not everything is black and white, and people are actually quite complicated, so please try to extend your memory past the last couple of months. Now, with all that time-wasting prelude out of the way, the person we are going to talk about today, who we have never once featured in one of my videos, is Ayda Rodriguez. Ayda Rodriguez is consistently the least valuable player at the Young Turks.
You just answer this from the perspective of a person of color as the mother of a black son. When you talk about very few people being racist in this country, I swear to God, these videos are like an episode of Scooby When people never believed us, when we kept talking about this racism, and people keep saying to us, it's a figment of your imagination. Get over it. It was 400 years ago. It's so tone deaf to tell people of color that very few people are racist when we gotta watch our sons die on the streets every fucking week. It's so offensive. It's so offensive.
Ayda Rodriguez consistently contributes absolutely nothing to every panel that she's on. In almost every one of her videos, she mentions the same exact talking points, regardless of what the topic is. And those talking points are that she has a black son.
The mother of a black son.
As a mother of 2 black children, imagine having to send your children out into the street every day worrying if they're going to come home.
Something about people of color and racism.
The woman across the street from where we live was watching my son listening to music in his car. And I had to go outside and said, oh, you got to get in the house, because if this racist lady calls the police on you, you may end up dead on this street.
You just answer this from the perspective of a person of color.
Coming from the perspective of a person of color.
And she will try her darndest to insert a Christopher Columbus reference.
We have PTSD since 1492, when the most violent immigrants got here.
Over it. It was 400 years ago. This racism that you're talking about, that's systemic and has been in this country for centuries.
Now I want to get into the clips. The first one is about Kelly Paul, who's Senator Rand Paul's wife, and how she doesn't feel safe in her neighborhood, and she's added more security due to a number of instances that happen involving her husband and other Republican senators. Here's how Ayda Rodriguez, on the network of empathy, responded to that.
I love to hear. Good story. Wow.
I love to hear these people talk about what they're afraid of and violence. Coming from the perspective of a person of color, we have PTSD since 1492, when the most violent immigrants got here. So when I hear these people talk about this tone-deaf white lady with her yoga arms talking about how she's scared and she's deadbolted in her house, imagine having to send your children out into the street every day worrying if they're going to come home because of the stuff that's happening out there to young people of color. You want to talk about violence? There's a history of violence in this country that we continue to ignore. And those of us who have been the recipients face of that violence, in addition to the economic violence with people who look like you and talk like you and act like you, it is so disrespectful to those of us who live in the neighborhoods who don't have the privilege and the honor of living a peaceful life where we don't have to worry that the biggest fight that we have in our lives is with a neighbor over some damn bushes. I don't want to hear anybody talk about this.
Isn't it lovely how she just hit every one of those notes that I laid out? It's almost like I selected the clip based on what I was gonna say in this video. This self-proclaimed feminist is so regressive, racist, and self-centered, she immediately jumped to attack Kelly Paul and then present herself as the victim. The reason Kelly Paul is taking all these extra measures to secure her home is due to the fact that a Democratic senator staffer recently leaked the home addresses of Republican senators on the internet. On top of that, Senator Paul was attacked by his neighbor and had 6 of his ribs broken, and that neighbor was convicted and only received a jail sentence of 30 days. Also, there was this thing called the congressional baseball shooting where a Bernie Sanders supporter tried to kill members of Congress. Rand Paul was one of the people that was targeted by the shooter. But Ayda ignores all of that because people of color have post-traumatic stress since 1492.
We have PTSD since 1492 when the most violent immigrants got here.
And in her opinion, Kelly Paul should be happy because all the attempts on her husband's life, those are just markers of her privilege.
It is so disrespectful to those of us who live in the neighborhoods who don't have the privilege and the honor of living a peaceful life where we don't have to worry.
Why can't she focus on real, current, modern problems like 1492, huh? Why can't she focus on that? I like how Kelly Paul is some kind of a moron who has to check her privilege because, you know, things actually happen to her. And the thing that Ayda Rodriguez inserts as a more pressing issue is something that happened 500 years ago. You know, those things that happen to nobody who's alive today. And the even more absurd thing about that is even if we play that ancestral guilt game, Ayda Rodriguez is probably more guilty than the Paul family. Ayda Rodriguez is Puerto Rican and Dominican. I'm half Puerto Rican. I'm gonna tell you a little secret about people of Hispanic origin. The reason that Spanish is the dominant language in South America is because that's a language inherited from people in Spain. I know that sounds crazy, but that means that people like me and Ayda, who are Hispanic, have a greater genetic connection to the Spanish conquistadores than random white people from Kentucky. Now, if you watch any anti-SJW YouTuber, you've seen your fair share of anti-white racism, using the distant past to claim some kind of victimhood status in the present, and I'm sure you're not surprised by a regressive showing the soft bigotry of low expectations by saying something as inherently racist as all people of color are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder because they can't get over Columbus. But would you believe that none of this so far is what made me want to make this video? What made me want to make this video is the analogy that she uses to describe the current state of racism in America. And that is that racism in America is just like an episode of Scooby-Doo.
It's like what I say all the time, it's like the ghost in Scooby-Doo. Nobody ever believed Scooby at the beginning. Keep saying, there's a ghost. Black people, brown people, there's a ghost. Nobody believes it. Then at the end, here are the video cameras. We see the ghost. Scooby and Shaggy were not lying, guys.
That clip is utterly amazing because it proves that A, Ayda Rodriguez is one of the most uninformed people in America, and B, that she's incapable of understanding a program as simple as Scooby-Doo. While it is true that at the beginning of every episode of Scooby-Doo, Shaggy and Scooby are the first to believe that it's ghosts, and at some point in the episode everybody thinks that the problem is ghosts, they are not ultimately proven right at the end of the episode. In fact, just the opposite. By the end of the episode, they are proven wrong, and the ghost turns out to be a real estate developer or some such thing. Sure, there are Scooby-Doo movies where the ghost turns out to be real, but those are the exemption and not the rule, which is why this is inadvertently a perfect analogy for racism in America. We have our regressives like Ayda and the entire staff at TYT who see a shadow and immediately assume it's racism. They're the Scooby and Shaggy. They may have a little piece of evidence here and there that indicates that it's possible that they could be right, but most of the time when you actually do the work and you make it through the whole episode, which in this case is doing all the research, you end up figuring out that there's a logical explanation that has nothing to do with race. Sure, there are outlier cases. There are Scooby-Doo movies where it's actually ghosts or it's actually some kind of monster, but most of the time, It's not what you think when you actually pay attention and you do the work. I mean, seriously, it's mind-boggling that she made this mistake and thinks it's a really powerful point. There are multiple Scooby-Doo series and they all end the same exact way. The most iconic line from the show is, "I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for those meddling kids." That's said when the ghost is unmasked and revealed to not be a ghost.
Then at the end, here are the video cameras. We see the ghost. Scooby and Shaggy were not lying, guys.
No, Scooby and Shaggy are not proven right. Were you not listening to what I just said? So there you guys go. The person who contributes the least to the Young Turks is Ayda Rodriguez. Bravo, round of applause. That's all I really have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. You know the deal. Like, share, subscribe, all that nonsense that I don't need to tell you. I also have a Patreon. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me on Patreon. No thank you to the non-patrons for not supporting me on Patreon. This has been me making a video based on a poll that I gave to you guys. Till next time.